Hey guys, this is Mary Ott again. It's late Saturday night, and I've been feeling a burden to tell y'all about what I experienced past week at Yellowstone. Um, and so I feel like I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm sorry about this room. I'm up in the loft. My air conditioner, my central unit in my house is out. And it's very hot. It's 90 degrees in my house, and so it's very oppressive. But my window unit in the loft, the above my garage, it's cooling up here. So yay! So I'm kind of camping out up here until Monday when I can get my air conditioner fixed. So last week, well, 2 weeks ago, we went to Yellowstone, and I had never been. I was so excited. I've been keeping up with the prophecy updates and just information. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a scientist, but I really enjoy the study of geology and the study of science and tectonic plates and volcanoes and things like that. And I've actually read a few books about tectonic plates and about volcanoes and how geology and all that works. It's really interesting. I'm a musician, and so I'm not a scientist. I have a scientific mind, but I'm not a scientist. Anyway, that being said, last week, Mom and I went to Yellowstone, and we planned a trip to go to Yellowstone, and then we went up to Calgary, Canada, and it was really nice. Last Monday, we got there, and we stayed, and we went to the Grand Teton National Park. Absolutely beautiful in many ways, more beautiful than even Yellowstone. It's gorgeous. Cool. This is June, but it was cool up there. I was wearing jackets, and I could have worn a sweatshirt that day. That was last Monday, 2 weeks ago, but Monday. So it will be 2 weeks ago this coming Monday. Today's Saturday. Anyway, so that was Monday. We got into Wyoming and stayed, and we stayed actually in Idaho in a little town called Rexburg, which is just about an hour and a half southwest of West Yellowstone entrance. And so we pulled in Monday night to our hotel in Rexburg, Idaho, and then Tuesday morning we spent all Tuesday, all Wednesday, and most of Thursday in Yellowstone. And we not overnight. We still, our hotel was in Idaho, but we stayed most of the day in Yellowstone. And we, of course, I had my hit list, what I wanted to do. I wanted to see Old Faithful. Mom wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. So there was a few things that we wanted to do that we knocked out first. I wanted to see Old Faithful. I wanted to see the geyser basins and things like that, and the pools, beautiful pools. So we knocked off all of that, and most of that was in the south part of Yellowstone. And so we spent a lot of time back. We didn't even go into the north part of Yellowstone until Thursday, when we realized this is our last day, and we have not been in the north part at all. Every time we'd come into to West Yellowstone, we drove across to the east part, but we hadn't been up north at all. And we were like, there's things up there that we'd like to see, but of course it's not as like popular and recognizable as like Old Faithful, but things that we really would like to see. So Thursday morning we went and we saw beautiful springs and a lot of geysers and pools, absolutely gorgeous. And what's neat about Yellowstone is that you'd be driving down the road and there's these rivers. There's several rivers that flow through there, that are fed by the glaciers on the top of the Tetons. And so you're seeing this beautiful cold water, and then all of a sudden in the river you'll see it steaming up like a steam vent, just like in the river. Or you'll see like a little pool, and the water in the pool is not water. It's like sulfur dioxide. It's like really, really crazy stuff. And what's weird is that, all of these are everywhere, and it's beautiful terrain. And then you're seeing crazy things like the water, the rapids, as it's going over the rocks, the water's like got a slight yellow tint to it. That's just weird. And I know that's just the sulfur dioxide. And the trees, they call them bobby sock trees, because as the trees are growing, they're actually pulling up all the nutrients and minerals that are being that have been there from the volcano, from the super volcano. And so they're pulling up all these calcium deposits and the sulfur. And so like a lot of times the bison and the buffalo will rub up against the tree, and they'll rub the bark literally off the tree, and you could see the tree, the flesh of the tree is yellow. It's like, seriously, this is weird. And there's things that you'll see in Yellowstone that you won't see anywhere else, because it's a unique place. You're walking around, you're like, this is beautiful, but you can see evidence that you're literally on top of a volcano. You are driving around the caldera. And I don't know if you know the history of Yellowstone, but of course, I don't believe in millions of years. I believe that God created the earth 6,000 years ago, took 6 days. Don't lose your salvation over it. If you don't agree with me, that's okay. You could still be saved. I'm not, just don't like be totally turned off by my belief. That's what I believe. I believe what the Bible said is true, and I take a literal translation of the Bible. So when I say millions of years, I kind of turn it off. But the science behind it, I agree with the science and the forensic science of, okay, this happened. I don't agree with their timeline, but I agree that it happened. So when they say that there were 3 eruptions that happened in the past at Yellowstone, I can say, okay, I know that happened because you can see the science behind it. There's the all the ash that has been deposited by these. Now the timeline off, but there has been 3 eruptions, and of course they've been not the same. Some have been bigger and some have been smaller. So as you're driving around, you'll actually be driving around and say caldera rim. Well, it's one of the caldera rims. There's 3 different ones because of the 3 different eruptions that have taken place there over the past thousands of years, not millions of years. Anyway, one thing that they've said for years is that they don't know what the clues to a super eruption, what the forerunning clues, the symptoms of the eruption, what's going to happen beforehand. Now they say, okay, before a regular volcano erupts, you have certain seismic clues that kind of tell you an eruption is impending. Things like increased earthquakes, things like the ground starting to swell in places, things like the rivers and the streams starting to emit sulfur dioxide gas, or there be, like starting to boil, things like that. So I mean, there's some clues that happen for regular volcanoes that they kind of think, well, if this is a super volcano, we see a lot of this going on automatically. There's eruption, earthquakes that happen all the time at Yellowstone. There's water, like I said, there's water that's being boiled randomly, through the streams. And so those kind of things are already there. So they kind of think, well, there'll be an increased activity of those things, increased activity of earthquakes, and not just in intensity but in frequency. So there'll be more and they'll be stronger, and so there's going to be an increased activity of those kind of things, and the ground starting to swell. And so not just a little bit, but a noticeable, okay, the ground is swelling. That's a big clue. Okay, maybe this is going to happen. No, they don't know. They don't really know for sure, because we've never seen, we've never had in the scientific age of man, we've never had documented a supervolcanic eruption. So we don't know what's going to happen. But some of the things that are concerning are that we've seen these seismic activities. And of course, I've heard about this for a few years. I've heard about the Shoshone River that flows nearby. There's the Shoshone National Forest adjacent to Yellowstone. And the Shoshone River that flows through there actually turned colors and started emitting sulfuric gas, which is not it's not usual for the Shoshone River, and it's not directly over the caldera. Now, it's nearby, and so of course it's got some proximity to the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone, but it's not necessarily right there. And so you would think like maybe Madison River or one of the other rivers that flow through Yellowstone would have been that. No, it was the Shoshone River, a few dozen, 50 miles away. It was not actually in Yellowstone. It was nearby. And of course, Yellowstone itself, there's inside the Yellowstone, there's the Yellowstone Lake, fed by, like I said, the other rivers and streams, the Yellowstone River, things like that. So there's the Yellowstone Lake right there in Yellowstone, and it's huge. I mean, it's like you drive by it, you don't see the other side. It's huge, and of course it's it's Wyoming, so you see everything. Anyway, and you're driving by and you see trees in the water. And okay, that tree didn't grow there. That tree needs, when it started to grow, it was on ground. It wasn't in a lake. And so that the ground has swollen in Yellowstone Lake to push the water up so that the trees that were used to be adjacent to the lake are now in the lake. And Mom's like, well, maybe that was just because of of Yellowstone, receiving, it's spring. And I'm like, Mom, that tree wouldn't have grown there because this happens every year. I mean, you have the glaciers feeding the rivers and the streams into the lake every year. So the lake is swollen at this time of the year every year. So it's not like it's just like, oh, this is a fluke thing. This happens yearly. So that tree is 20, 30 years old, and it's not supposed to be in the lake. It's not supposed to be there. So, and I had heard about these things, but when we were there, it was gorgeous. Other than the things, the bison, scratching off the bark, and we saw the bobby sock trees, and we saw, the regular geologic features, like Old Faithful, and we saw Norris Geyser Basin, and we saw all that. And then, of course, you talk to the park rangers, and you're like, well, why haven't you named all of these unique geological features? And they're like, because they pop up all the time. And so when they pop up, they could disappear tomorrow. And so we're going to wait a little bit and see how long it takes. If it's going to stay there, then we'll name it. And I'm like, I totally get that. I wouldn't want to be starting naming things and then like two days later they're gone, or even 2 years later they're gone. It's a unique feature. Yeah, a steam vent just opened up. We're not going to name that steam vent until it's like been there for 5 years. Oh, okay, that steam vent. Yeah, okay. Which is kind of disconcerting because you're like, okay, this happens a lot, where things just open up and then they go away. That means that the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone is very active, and they say that it was dormant. I'm sorry, that ain't dormant. It's there. And when you have Old Faithful, by the way, which is not faithful anymore, that's weird and also disconcerting when Old Faithful ain't so faithful. That's weird. When you have all these things that are popping up and then disappearing, that means that there's changes going on beneath the surface. So that's kind of something's going on. But other than those things, and we just kind of let it be. Cool, awesome. So we went Thursday morning on that week. We went to North Side, and we ate at the diner. By the way, the diner was great. There was a line at the other place, the bar, the girl place, but there was a line over there, not at the diner. The diner was great. It was the dining room. It was great. So we went to the dining room, and then we went and drove through and saw some things on the west side. And like I said, had been using the west entrance because that was where we were staying in Idaho. So we would go through the west entrance through Montana, through West Yellowstone, Montana, to get to our hotel in Idaho, in Rexburg, Idaho. So we decided, we've been passing all these shops in West Yellowstone every day. And it was like, okay, they have some cool shops like candy and ice cream and coffee. And it's like, cool. So we decided to, after lunch, to drive through and go back to West Yellowstone, and on our way back to our hotel, we would just do a little bit of shopping. And we didn't do a whole lot of shopping. I found a quilt store that bought some yarn. We found a candy store. Mom found her favorite licorice and bridge mix, So, I mean, it was just like a fun afternoon that we went shopping right there in West Yellowstone. And then we get in a car and we drove back to our hotel. We were back to our hotel probably about 6 o'clock, local time, mountain time. And then we got up the next morning, went to Alberta, went to Calgary, and we stayed a few days. And on our way back to Louisiana, where I live, I started hearing all of this about Yellowstone, about how the day we were there, the last day, that Thursday, all of these earthquakes happened. And there was like a 4.6 magnitude earthquake that happened, get this, West Yellowstone. And it happened at like 7 something that evening, right after we left. I was like, seriously? It was like God said, I want Mary and Martha to go and visit Yellowstone. Okay, they've left now. Now we can let it go. I don't know. I think, that's kind of self-absorbed, and I know that that's not true. However, that was just weird that happened right after we left. And then they were saying that not just Yellowstone had the earthquake swarm of over 60 earthquakes that happened, and most of them you can't feel, which is normal, because if they're really, really low on the Richter scale, you're not going to feel it. But they felt these earthquakes in West Yellowstone, Montana. They felt them all over the northwest part of Yellowstone, and they even have like videos of the mountain, of the cloud, of the glacier, and the cloud and the snow that was on top of the mountain that I drove through on Tuesday. It had kind of shaken it so much it had lifted off the mountain. It's like, seriously, we were just there. We were just there, and it happened at Norris Geyser Basin. We had just seen that. So it was very disconcerting. And then they started talking about not just Yellowstone earthquakes. There were earthquakes all over the world that day. On the 19th, there were earthquakes all over the world. I mean, Harrison, Arkansas? Seriously? In Washington, yes, that's on the Ring of Fire. Yellowstone, I can get. Harrison, Arkansas? Those are fault lines that are, the New Madrid Fault was right there near Tennessee and near Memphis and all that. New Madrid Fault was the one that changed the course of the Mississippi River. And right there in Harrison, Arkansas, in the Ozarks, what they consider to be the oldest mountain range in the United States. Yeah, seriously? An earthquake in the Ozarks? The same time there were earthquakes in Yellowstone? So it really has me like, I have this urgency going on inside of me. And I've been feeling like, okay, there's something going on at Yellowstone. Something that's, God's just like, watch Yellowstone. Watch Yellowstone. And I got to thinking about Bible prophecy and about how the Jews not really celebrate, but they commemorate and remember the 9th of Tammuz, because the 9th of Tammuz was the day when the wall was breached. Now, that wasn't the day that Jerusalem was overrun by the Babylonians. That was the day the wall was breached. Now, a year ago was when, on the 9th of Tammuz, the Supreme Court decided to legalize gay marriage. And you mess with the oldest institution that God ordained, the covenant between a man and a woman, which represents the covenant between God and his people, and you mess with that institution, and you're messing with hedge of protection. And when the United States of America Supreme Court decides to legalize something that God calls an abomination, our hedge has been lifted. They did it on the 9th of Tammuz, the day that the Jews commemorate and remember how the wall was breached around Jerusalem. And then that led them to be susceptible to be overtaken. And so I got to thinking about that. I was like, Lord, we have spat in his face by doing this. No, we didn't. The Christians have not, and there's many people in the United States that don't agree with this. Now, it's one thing to have sin in your life, and it's one thing to if you are a homosexual person, God loves you. God loves you. Now, he doesn't like what you do, but that's with any sin. You could be in an adulterous affair. You could be doing, murdering people, or lying to your parents, or gossiping. God does not like those things. He does not like sin. And he will treat all sin the same as far as it all will bring you death, unless you get right with Jesus and confess that sin and turn away from that sin. However, when the institution of that sin has been okayed by the government, that's when God says, no, that's too far. That's a bridge too far. You've gone overboard. That is putting your stamp of approval on something that I call an abomination. And not all of the United States, not every single person. I don't believe that God will hold each one of us accountable. He'll hold us accountable for the votes we cast. He'll hold us accountable for when we go to the ballot box. What are we doing? Are we holding his truths to let us be guided by that when we cast our votes? So those kinds of things he will hold us accountable, things that we have done. But when the Supreme Court does that, he's not going to judge the whole people, but he will let the hedge of protection that protects the American citizens be lifted. And that is what I'm scared about with Yellowstone. Not scared. I'm not scared about Yellowstone. I want everyone to be aware, because there's something going on. And now our hedge is gone. And be very, very careful. Have your heart right with Jesus, because his time is coming. And I'm going up in the rapture. That's why you can't threaten me with death. I'm going to heaven. I mean, seriously? You kill me, I get to see my Lord. And I get to see my husband. I get to see my grandmother. I'm not worried about this earth. I'm just here abiding till he comes and occupying until he comes. I am not have my heart set on living here, because this is not my home. I'm just here until he calls me home. And so I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about the people that are watching this, that don't have their heart right with Jesus, that are living in sin, that need to get right with God, because the time is short and we don't know what's going to happen before then. It may be that the rapture happens before all of that, before all of Yellowstone or nuclear war or anything like that. We don't know what's going to happen, and maybe the rapture's first, maybe it's not. I don't know, because all I know is the rapture's coming. I don't know the timeline of events for those things that may be coming along with it. Like Yellowstone could go right now. Rapture could come right now. I don't know. We live our days watching and waiting and staying pure, because I need to be ready when he comes. Oil in my lamp. I don't want to be like the 5 foolish virgins that didn't have their oil in their lamp. I have my oil in my lamp ready to go whenever he calls me home. So watch Yellowstone. And just so you know, like I was talking about the 9th of Tammuz, this is just a thing. I'm not predicting anything. I'm not making any dates. Some people will be like, oh, Mary said this. Mary does not say this. Mary is just saying, what if Yellowstone happens on the 9th of Tammuz? Remember that day that the Jews commemorate the bridge, the wall being breached? Well, that's coming up very soon. It happens to be on July the 3rd. The day before our Independence Day celebrations. That's the 9th of Tammuz. Yeah. What would it be if on July the 3rd, going into the 4th, the 9th of Tammuz, if Yellowstone erupted on that day? Or it could erupt today. Because scientists say They don't know when it's going to happen. They know it's going to happen. I mean, Jesus tarries. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Because they say, well, scientists say about millions of years. I take those millions of years and I shrink them because I don't believe. They say 600,000 years ago, 640,000 years ago, that it erupted. And it's supposed to erupt every 600,000 years, which, of course I shrink because I don't believe in all that long period of time. But what I'm saying is we're overdue. The scientists say we're overdue. And we have 10%. One of the scientists say we have a 10% chance of it happening this year. Every year it passes, we have a 10% chance of it happening. Like, okay, lovely. And that same scientist said that if Yellowstone erupts at full capacity, well, not full capacity, but full capacity-ish, maybe like the 80% eruption, not the full 100%, maybe the 80% eruption. If it blows like that, we won't have 50 states in the Union. We'll have 30. That's what he said. That's kind of scary. And not just that, not just those people that died near the park and like 500-mile radius around the park that are immediately dead because of the but also all that ash falls on the continental United States. And so then ash, I don't know if you know this, but when it mixes with water, it turns like cement. And so if you get like 1 inch, that's bad. If you get 3 inches, that's really bad. And it turns into concrete when it's wet. And so like if ash falls and then it rains, which probably will happen, then guess what? You've got a 3-inch thick concrete slab on your roof. You think your roof is going to hold that? It's not going to. It's going to collapse and people are going to die. And then not just people dying from roofs collapsing, but then that happens in the heartland of America, the breadbasket of the world, and we're not going to have any growing season. We're not going to have any food for all these millions of people that live in this country. We're not going to have it. There's not going to be enough food for everybody. So you better be prepared. So stay prayed up, keep your robes white, and then also keep some food on hand, because like I said, I think the rapture could happen at any moment. But so could Yellowstone. So could nuclear war with Russia or, North Korea. Look at the signs of the times. We are on the verge of war with Russia. We're on the verge of war with North Korea. We're on the verge of war with Iran. Yeah, it's bad. We are at a precipice. And I've felt this urgency inside of me, and it's been growing. And people have been like, oh, well, Trump got elected, so we have a reprieve. Maybe not. I don't know. Because I feel like the urgency is increasing. And spiritual warfare has been crazy lately. I have been literally fighting off demons, and it's been crazy. I all of a sudden the Holy Spirit will rise up inside of me, and I'll just start speaking in tongues, and it happens more and more and more and more. This intercessory prayer that's been rising up within me, and that happens when there's stuff brewing. I know that there's war going on, not just in the human realm, but in the spiritual realm. There's war, and we have to fight that battle, and we have to be prepared. Stay prayed up. Keep some water on hand. Keep some granola bars, some non-perishable food items. Most importantly, keep your robes white. Stay close to Jesus. And watch Yellowstone, because it could go at any moment. Or watch The Bride of Christ, Eastern Sky, because we could go at any moment. Talk to you later. Y'all have a good night. Bye.